this week's Body Chat. Today I am delighted to be joined by Tereza Litsa from Lightful. Hi Tereza, how are you?
Hi Bobby, good to be here.
Can you tell everyone who might not know you what you do?
So I'm doing anything around marketing at Lightful, so social and content. And Lightful is a tech for good company working with charities. And I'm also running the Reclaim Social campaign.
Cool. Tell me more about
You
Reclaim
probably,
Social.
Sure. You've probably seen me on Twitter, either me or just tweeting about Reclaim Social.
Yeah.
So we started 3 years ago a campaign from Lightful called Reclaim Social. And the idea was back then, I think we were still talking about the elections or about Brexit when it was brand new. Right. So that was the only topic that felt like big before everything became even worse. And we felt, why don't we try to have for a day something more positive? We were already quite in the beginning with Lightful, and we were saying that we all work with a purpose of making things a little bit more inspiring. Like everything we do, it's all about having a purpose and supporting others. And we felt like, okay, it's a great opportunity to get all the charities to amplify their own messages. And we know that their stories are very important, but we don't always highlight them even beyond the sector.
Yeah.
And it felt like a great opportunity to have a day, it was on the 6th of February, and say, let's reclaim social for good. And it went way better than what we expected. We felt like, okay, it's just a fun day. Let's just between us and our friends or partners. And then all of a sudden it reached like millions of people. And we said, okay, we need to continue. So just like that, the next year it went even better. Then the third year, I was like, okay, no panic. You just need to go even better and reach more people than the first 2 years. And yeah, it became like a project for me on its own, and like trying to find new opportunities to like evolve that and have more conversation and not just think of it as one-off thing. It's not just one day. But it's more about the bigger conversation that is happening even more now. How can we make social media more impactful on an everyday basis?
And this year you did some talks as well, is that right?
Yeah.
I have a vague memory of seeing. Feels like a world away.
I'm trying to think, when was the last talk on a face-to-face event? It's been a while, I guess.
Yeah.
Did I talk with Charity Coms last year, and I joined fundraising everywhere when things started getting more virtual.
Yeah.
So it's usually on the more practical use of social media, whether it's around Reclaim Social and creating a community and a campaign, or just how the future of social media can really be something to look at and evolve that even more on our own work.
And what do you normally say to charities when they go, how do we develop it? Because that's like the number one ask that I get quite a lot is, how do we develop a community around this? What would your response to that be?
I think it really depends on the chats we're having, because we're talking to charities of all sizes, really, with Lightful and the training we're doing.
Yeah.
And there might be a charity with like 3 members. So as you can imagine, they know already that I can't do too many things.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, what's one thing that I should do, like with my limited time?
So at least they know that they're limited, exactly. Right?
I love this case because you know that at least they know the limitations. They don't come to you and they're like, okay, how can I go viral?
Yeah.
But there are other cases where you feel like, okay, I've tried 1, 2 things on social, it's not working, so I guess it's not for me. So then there's the case of like trying to get them to understand that it's a long-term process. It needs a consistency. You need to start like gradually building it. Yeah. It's not just creating a Facebook group or any sort of community and say, okay, why isn't like working? Why don't I have like 10,000 members?
Yeah,
it's more about growing into that and having the planning in mind and say, okay, it's not just creating it and bringing a few people. You need to keep it growing and like being active.
Yeah, I think so many charities, especially, I mean, I haven't been asked I want to have that ice bucket challenge for a while, but I think that's probably because I've moved out of just being social media and onto more of like a kind of project management side of things and kind of developing products and things. Yeah. Do you still get, how can we do the ice bucket challenge?
Luckily, no. Actually, it's been a while that I haven't heard of that. I know, right?
There was definitely a brief moment, probably like 2 years, where it was like, how do I do that? Because you just do it, right?
The thing that keeps coming back, and I'm still hoping that there will be a case that it won't come back at some point, is how do I get more followers? And not necessarily from a genuine way that you want to grow your community.
Yeah.
It's still the thinking sometimes that we feel like the number of followers reflects your value on social media,
yeah,
or how you're performing as an organization.
Yeah.
So I always have like the same response. It's not the number of followers, it's also the engagement. It's better to have a smaller community and very engaged rather than just looking at the number of followers.
Yeah. Do you think that who's asking you that question? Is that kind of quite a junior digital comms officer, or is that kind of a higher leadership level? Like, where does the training have to be got?
That's a really good point. A really good point. I think sometimes it comes from those who do get social, but they also say that my board members are asking, why don't we have like a growth in followers? Because we're investing now the last few months, so we need to see the followers.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a bigger picture in that case, that it's not just about training, for example, those that we're working with as part of like capacity building programs. It's more about convincing also the senior members to understand how social media and digital really works.
Yeah.
So that's like a long process, I guess.
Yeah. And that's something that there's quite a few people kind of trying.
Still trying
to work on. Yeah. So when you do since lockdown and the pandemic, have you been continuing to run the learning things through Lightful?
Yes, actually, we've been busier than ever, which is good. I think the fact that our digital capacity building program, it's called Bridge. So it started 2 years ago and it was all virtual because we're working with charities all over the world.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden there were more who were understanding the importance on being to grips with being more digital and of course, getting into virtual training, not just face-to-face. And that was really good on our side, also knowing how to facilitate things when you're working with charities all over the world, how to consider the time zones, the differences, or the accessibility, because some of them were like, I'm not having a stable internet connection.
Yeah.
So you can just have live sessions in that way, or you can just rely on video.
Yeah.
And it's really trying to adjust as much as possible and not have like a set plan and saying I'm going to follow this. You just need to be as flexible as it gets.
Yeah, you really have to be flexible especially when you're delivering online.
Yeah.
Exactly. I did the first bout of the 6-week key concepts course over the summer, and you set a time, and especially at the moment, people's lives are so up in the air. We were like meeting every Tuesday at 5:00 for an hour, but some weeks there'd be no one, or like 1 or 2 people, because work had had to take precedent, or kid was sick, or God knows what. So I was always planning on recording them and just putting them up, but I'm glad that I did, just because otherwise there was 20 odd people taking the course, and generally there was only ever 4 or 5 in the live classes, so it was kind of, you had to kind of balance those things. When are you ever asked for a magic formula on social?
Yeah, several times. So they were starting the program and they were like, okay, what's the secret now? What do I need to know? Like, you are the expert. There must be some secret formula. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not sure. It's the starting point. I guess it's good to be determined that you need to find some sort of formula for you. But there isn't like something that magically transforms your digital presence.
Yeah.
So sometimes they are disappointed after that. And you're like, okay, I guess we need to start like with a different thinking in terms of getting it right.
Yeah. How would you kind of, just for those people watching, what would you say the steps they need to take to work out what their own magical formula is? So where would they begin in your
I guess it's probably starting from where you are. Even if you don't have like a really set and active digital presence, where are you right now in general in your organization? Where are the challenges? And what do you really want to get in terms of your objectives? It's not just saying, I want to have a Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok account, because that's like the easy part. You just set up the account. But then you're like, okay, what do you want to get out of it? Is it a specific campaign? Do you have the capacity to actually keep it active?
Yeah.
And why do you really want to keep it active? So you start with your own like reasons and thinking, what do I expect out of that? And if you don't have any expectations, then you come with like some assumptions.
Yeah.
And you say, I want to give this a try to see how it goes. And if I feel that it's just a waste of my time, because now it's more important than ever, you don't want to have like too many things happening. Like, as long as you stay consistent and you start understanding that it needs some planning, it's not just saying, okay, I'm going to post something today and then I'll come back in 4 months to post the next thing.
Yeah.
So it's better to have 1-2 things to get started than start experimenting, rather than just going everywhere and they'll feel I really don't have time to keep it up.
Yeah. I was in a trustee meeting to make it, who I'm a trustee of, earlier this week, and we were talking about the age-old issue and kind of more pertinent issue of trust funds, and the fact that since COVID, everyone's after trust funds, especially for core. So I'd already kind of seeded in the chief exec's mind that we needed to look at digital presence and increasing that presence so that then we could look for individual giving and maybe regular giving. But before we could do that, we needed people to know who we were and what impact we did. And then all of the other trustees started kind of popping in with, oh, we can go onto this channel and we can go onto this channel. In the end, I was like, we haven't even got Twitter sorted yet. You know, there's one person who has access to the Twitter account who's a trustee and a volunteer. And it was fine when we were going into a prison working once a week and running the choirs. But since the pandemic, we haven't been able to do that. So we haven't had, although there's been lots going on and we've been delivering some really innovative projects in quite innovative ways, you know, like creating stuff in cell activity rather than someone going in. But how do you share that when you can't share pictures? You can't, you couldn't share pictures anyway in a prison. But it was one of those where it was like, no, let's not go to Instagram. Let's try and work out how we can start having conversations with people on Twitter just to begin with, and maybe blogging or writing a news item.
Exactly. It's not just social. Sometimes we feel like, okay, we have to be on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. But even like, as you said, like blogging or sharing stories, you can still start from your website. It's not necessarily to create more channel. It's just to feel that you have to be present.
Yeah. And quite often people forget that it should be a way to an end as well. Eventually, exactly. Like once you've created that community, surely you want that community to do something. And so you need to have that link between whatever it is you want that community to do in the end.
And it's also interesting. Sometimes I'm also surprised when I think that, you know, how sometimes they say that, keep in mind that at the end of the day, whatever you have on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, like it's not yours. If Facebook wakes up one day and they feel like I'm done, I'm shutting it down, it does not belong to you compared to your website and your content.
Exactly. And there's also, we were talking about kind of images and sharing images on Instagram that had been made and that we had gone through a sign-off process potentially to do. And I was like, we won't own them. The person that created them won't own that copyright. That copyright goes into the ownership of Instagram. And I always worry that a lot of, I follow a load of artists on Instagram, and like every time I see, I'm like, do you know? I mean, because they could be used, they could decide to use them for an advert, and then those artists aren't going to get paid.
I feel that not everyone really realizes that, or there are many people, even on a personal level, like they feel like because you're sharing something privately, like on Messenger, like nobody has access to that. And I'm like, actually, they can access everything. So just keep that in mind, whatever you're sharing.
Yeah, because they own it. They own the platform. So if they want to see it, they can. It's not encrypted, so they can see it. But so have you started planning for Reclaim next year, or is that?
I started thinking about it, but I also feel like it's a very tricky year. Like what's happening in February 2021? How can we tell right now?
I can't even tell what's going to happen in November 2020.
So I'm getting into some ideas, and I feel like it's not just the regular year when you say, okay, let's be positive, because chances are we won't be extremely positive probably, and whatever news is happening, but it's kind of like, how can we still continue the conversation on Reclaim Social, but in a more meaningful way or even more practical? So instead of just saying, let's be positive, it's saying, okay, how can we practically reclaim social? Of course, we want the tech platforms to make changes, but this is not happening probably anytime soon. But still, how can we do it on our own in terms of like our personal use of social media or our professional ones? Or how can we educate others in things like what we were saying on knowing how social media works? Like from privacy, from safety, from understanding more things. Sometimes we take some things for granted because we work in digital.
Yeah.
And when you talk to others, you realize that there's a long way to go.
Yeah, a huge way to go for some people as well. I mean, also, like, one thing that I've noticed this year is a lot of my friends and family are getting, especially on Facebook, getting pretty annoyed with some messages and then responding in the comments and kind of then becoming attacked by so I suppose it's like, how do you reclaim social without putting yourself at risk? That's quite an interesting question.
I feel like it's quite an important question, and it probably comes to like educating everyone in a sense of like start understanding how social media works. Like I've seen so many posts and comments that I get angry and I just feel the need to respond. But then you also start thinking, okay, like this is what they want. This is what the algorithm would prefer, because you start building the engagement, and of course you might get attacked. You might find something horrible after, or just affect your mental health and feel like at that point angry, sad, depressed. So this is the point when you start being more critical and you say, okay, why is that helping me to actually continue the conversation? Just because I don't agree with something doesn't mean that I should start like insulting someone.
No.
So it's more about getting a case, like you don't want to get into the rabbit hole when you start continuing the comments and it keeps going.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, some people's social media behavior is now coming out into the real world as well. I'm seeing that so much more, you know, where previously they'd be like, well, I'm behind the computer, you know, keyboard warrior. But now they're doing it in public. And it's kind of like the fact that they haven't been challenged on social for so long, it's just kind of made them brazen about.
It's really scary, because if you think how like all the misinformation around vaccines and COVID in general, or elections, like the power that social media is having right now is very terrifying.
It's huge. It really is. I need to. So about 10 of my friends have suggested the social media documentary on Netflix. I can't remember the name of it now. I need to watch it. It's like on my. I'll have a chill out on Saturday night and just put it on.
It's not very chilling. You need to be aware it's not chilling.
I think it's just one of those that I need to watch so I can be part of that conversation again, really.
I felt the same, and then I finally watched it last week. It wasn't something that I really didn't know, but I still found it scary, because it's when you realize like the algorithm, the effect on democracy, elections, mental health, or how teenagers who really grew up with social media, you realize it's like a completely different concept. Because at least we had a few years like without being on the phone all the time or online, but for them it's life, it's their interactions and everything happening.
And you know, when I was a teenager, it was because it was broadband, like plugged in, it wasn't Wi-Fi. It meant that, you know, I had an hour a night, and in that I had to do my homework and speak to my friends on MSN and maybe get a bit of MySpace going on and all of that kind of stuff. But it wasn't for like, it was very much a time limited thing. You don't have that anymore. Like, you know, you can just walk down the high street and constantly get Wi-Fi.
That's true.
And it's very scary.
You're not really offline, and it's scary.
I really liked it. A couple of days ago I left my phone at home accidentally. Like, just went for a long walk and left it at home, and it was just really nice not to have like notifications like it's happening now in my back pocket. Just having like these little beeps coming through. Really nice. I think I've seen quite a few people have social media holidays over
I guess
COVID.
Especially right now, it's very easy to just be online all the time. And even like charging my phone, I see that I might run out of battery, but I'm like, that's fine, I still have a charger, I'm not going out much. So.
I
raise the phone in your hand.
I get to 20% and I'm like, oh my god, I need a it's ridiculous. I'd love when you have more, and when we are able to kind of share more about Reclaim for next year, probably January, to be fair. Hope so. Going with how quickly everything is changing in the world at the moment, it's going to be really difficult to plan.
Exactly.
But yeah, I'd love to kind of have you on here again so we can help promote it, and hopefully, well, any other time as well, because it's just good to chat.
Nice to have buddy chats, right?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, thanks so much for joining. I try and keep these quite short, just otherwise people get bored.
No, that's fair point. We're watching too many videos now and like
Yeah.
too much time. So
Yeah.
it's fair.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, yeah.